All right, I'm going to briefly discuss with you guys and gals, although this would mainly apply to guys because it's usually guys who are chasing a very aesthetic upper body look. But this could absolutely apply to women too. So let's talk about this today. So when it comes to guys chasing aesthetics, and I mean a certain look, that aesthetic look, a lot of guys are looking for, as opposed to just being as big as possible. You have to think in terms of proportion. You have to think in terms of those classic aesthetics and what that entails. Now, I obviously don't quite have that look right now. I'm working slowly more towards it as I'm doing more bodybuilding and less powerlifting. But the ideas are the same. So when someone is chasing that look, what you're looking for is usually the wide shoulder look with a V taper. Okay, so we need to be very, very clear what gets you there. Now, obviously, one of the best things you can do, of course, is to get leaner, because when we start talking about V-taper and again, hip to shoulder ratio and things like that, obviously the smaller your waistline is in terms of width, the better, which means body fat. So again, we need to be clear there. Getting leaner alone will improve that. So even in my case, you guys can see there I'm still dieting down. Obviously, I trim another 4 inches off my waistline. That's going to change those ratios. So up front, we do need to be extremely clear that body fat is arguably, outside of the things we do in the weight room, the number one thing you can do. So we need to, again, be very clear on that. You're going to have to be lean. Okay, you're going to have to be lean. You're going to need to be lean enough to have a six-pack to really particularly have that look we're talking about. And again, we're talking about a classic aesthetic look, and people will do stuff to really, really mess it up, like over-focus on their traps or something. That would be a really bad idea. So, because it makes you look narrower unless you really have wide shoulders. So, when we think about that, you're going to see me doing some exercises in the background in this video. You're going to see a bunch of shoulder work. You're going to see some incline bench and some weighted pull-ups. So, these exercises are perfect examples of what gets us there. So why the incline bench? And that one might be a little bit harder to explain in terms of those ratios, but mainly because it really helps fill out your upper chest a lot. Keep in mind, it does work the whole chest. You guys are like, so we don't want a big chest. No, you want a big chest. But what you're looking for is delts, and you really want the upper chest and the front delt tie-ins to kind of finish all that off. And keep in mind, that is more finishing it. It's not necessarily the main thing to focus on. But the incline bench is an extremely valuable lift for this. But I want to caution, you also don't want to have no pecs and really big shoulders. That doesn't look good either. So you're looking at overall proportions, but keeping in mind that bigger delts, particularly side delts, is almost never a bad thing. It's very difficult to have delts that are too wide, particularly if you're a natural or drug-free lifter. You don't have to worry about having delts that are ever going to be too big. The only thing you might be worried about is your chest being too small. Okay, so again, incline bench though can be really useful here because again, just the development of that upper chest, it can help kind of frame the shoulders from that front or the side view a little bit. So putting a lot of efforts into an incline bench is not a bad idea. And I'm not saying the flat bench isn't great here also. It's a great overall chest builder. Just pointing out that if you're chasing that look, putting some effort into the incline bench can absolutely be a good idea. It'll help you tremendously towards these goals. All right, the next thing you're obviously going to want to look at, obviously you want wide shoulders, but how do we really get that V-taper? Well, you're going to look wider the bigger your lats are. So specifically the part of your back we're really concerned with is going to be lats. Okay, why? Because that's what makes your back wider. It's a thin muscle. It is not that big of a muscle. It's just a very wide muscle. But the wider you can get your lats, the wider you're going to look, the more even when you're relaxed, your arms and shoulders and everything are going to be pushed out more. Like a lot of times you'll see really big guys, they're like, oh, they're walking around with inflated lats. No, that's just them relaxed because their lats are that big. In my case, because I have a lot of back development, that I'm in that category. Like your arms almost won't go down until you can't touch your side without flexing to do so once you have big lats. So pull-ups are, in my opinion, the king for building lats. I'm not saying lat pull-downs don't work. I'm not saying rows can't help. What I'm saying is that pull-ups specifically bring a lot to the table there. They're probably the best exercise. Get really good at pull-ups. Get really good at weighted pull-ups. And you're going to have that wide back. That's what's going to give you that V taper. Because as much as we can argue about delts being the most important, keep in mind if you don't have any lats at all, it's going to be hard for you to get those ratios and that V taper that you're looking for. All right, so once all of that is sorted and you understand these things and you've been working the lats, it really does make sense to put a lot of effort into delts. Notice I'm saying delts specifically, I'm not talking about traps. Your traps are going to grow enough from just your delt and your back work that if you were chasing that look, you probably don't need to put a lot of thoughts into your traps because they're going to grow. They're going to be plenty big just from doing all this other stuff. So usually when guys want really massive traps, that's a different look that they're going for. They're going for oftentimes a really thick look. Now, if you really feel they're too small and you have big round delts, by all means, you may want to get them into proportion. But that's really something kind of as an afterthought there. They shouldn't be a primary focus. So guys who are like, oh, I'm doing above the knee rack pulls and all this nonsense trying to build massive traps and they don't have delts, you're really, really messing up this goal. And when I say delts, I mean delts are one of those muscles that you want to develop them as fully as possible. So you actually want to hit all the heads. I would recommend you do something for the lateral head, the side head. That should be the primary. But should you do some front delt work? Very probably. Now, incline can be really good for doing that, but doing some front raises or something else may not be a bad idea if we're trying to fully develop the shoulder. Same thing on the posterior delt. You're going to want to do some isolation work for it, some sort of machine or dumbbell or plates, rear delt flies or pull aparts. There's a lot of things you can do. I personally mostly just like to use plates and like a bent over type rear delt raise, and that's what I do. But a lot of these other tools can be helpful. But the thing is, delts. Again, I only point out the other things because they kind of build the foundation. But if you were really trying to chase that look, fully and maximally developing your delts as a very high priority would be the best thing you can do. As any single muscle, the delts probably do contribute the most to that sort of aesthetic look that we're talking about here. So again, it would behoove you to put a lot of effort into maximally developing them, whether it's combinations of big movements like an upright row here, or variety of isolation movements. I would actually advocate for someone really chasing that look. You may want to actually isolate every head of the delt. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.